I'd like to introduce Gail Soffer. She is the founder and the executive director for the Mindful Veteran Project.
We have been around for a while. We're a nonprofit, 501c3, by virtue of being a project of community partners. And that was an intentional setup, structure, because I've been in nonprofit management almost my whole life and been through a lot of different formats of nonprofits and done all the back office work, all the management. And when it came time to be doing this work in a very specific way, compensating for a lot of the gaps I saw in services to our military connected population, I wanted to be boots on the ground, out in the field, providing the services, not in a back office. So as a project of community partners, they cover the HR, the legal, all the admin stuff for us. We do our fair share to submit to them, but it keeps us absolutely compliant and more than squeaky clean while being creative out in the field.
Now, I want to make sure now, are you a veteran? You're not a veteran, correct?
I'm the daughter of a veteran, and there are a lot of people in my family who have served. And so a little bit, and it wasn't until I was a few years into this and speaking at an event that I realized this is one way of honoring my father, who was a veteran who died when I was a little girl. So besides just the desire to make a difference in the world, and especially to serve people who have given so much, who have looked to something, it's like, I don't want to just be grabbing for myself. I want to take care of my fellow human beings. I want to protect. I want to serve. So much came into play with this. And a lot of my earlier nonprofit management had been with peace initiatives and humanitarian aid. And it was very interesting when I was asked about, well, how do you feel about, I was actually asked, how do you feel about serving the perpetrators of war? I just said, veterans are not the perpetrators of war. If anything, they're the victims of it. They carry the burdens of it. And with this background in peace initiatives, who would more appreciate coming all the way home to a place of peace than someone who has served in war? So it brought in a lot of elements from my past, a lot of passions that I have, and really just wanting to bring the best of everything I've learned in my life in a creative way, not burned by a lot of structures, and to provide something that's confidential, that's really the real deal, supportive, and addresses the human being, not what kind of paper do you have, not when and where did you serve, not what happened to you or what did you do, but just here's a human being who can be offered a lot of possibilities, with the bottom line being, I think this is when I switched from the humanitarian aid and peace initiatives to specifically veteran services. I went 0 to 60 on what was available and what was happening. And I was appalled to find that right under my nose, here's a population that, unlike any in the world, is taking its own life at an unheard of rate. No other population in the world is doing that. So for there to be that much suffering and lack of support to make a difference, it's just like, this is triage. This is where all the care that I can find really needs to go. And with the bottom line being, no one should ever have to feel trapped, stuck at the end of their road and resort to unhealthy or even deadly ways of easing pain and suffering. So we have the core of our work, and we're exploring possibilities. We're opening up. Have you considered this? Try this. So it's very experiential. It's not lecture. It's not philosophical. Sometimes people see the word mindful and think, oh no, it's some new age spiritual trips. I don't want to meditate. I don't want to be all peace lovey. I'm a warrior. It's not that. This is experiencing the present moment and all of the possibilities in it.
The workshops is really where the magic happens. I remember one time I went to an event at, it might have been West LA VA, and I think that might have been the last time I saw you. I was with someone and we saw you, and you were out there with your volunteer helpers because you don't do this by yourself. You really are exactly what you say. You are a community partner and you partners with others that have an equal mindset to your own as to how can we help solve the issue of veteran suicide. And because there's just no reason for veterans to be in that position when there is so much help available. So let's talk about the healing process and how you do that through mindfulness.
So yeah, it's very different since the pandemic. We have a lot of Zoom workshops. We also talk to people on the phone. So one thing, this is a little bit of a side, but people might not know about this. We found there were a lot of people who, because of lack of technology, either where they were living or their situation, especially during lockdown, were really struggling. And so we set up a phone pals program, similar to pen pals in the good old days, so that a team of people were available to just talk on the phone with veterans who were isolated, and they didn't even have to say they were having a hard time. It was just like, yeah, I would love to just have a conversation with someone. And it wasn't therapy, it wasn't social work, it wasn't, are you okay? It was simply good like you would sit down over a cup of coffee and just chat with someone. What's your favorite color? What movie did you watch recently? Just to maintain connection. Because the essence of mindfulness is connecting. It's connecting with ourselves, with another person, with our environment. It's paying attention to present moment experiences, which can be physical, mental, emotional, interpersonal, environmental. And so we got creative. It's just like, let's help people continue to connect, not feel I'm alone and what's the point, and do something unfortunate. So that was one way that we continued offering just a sense of connection. And
I think that's so important now when just looking at my own life, I I love the fact that I can have a conversation on Zoom with really anybody, not necessarily recording it for a TV show, although that's part of the appeal of it, but the human connection, uh, FaceTime, being able to have a video chat with somebody. I mean, it's not the same as in person, obviously, but is better than I'm all by myself and nobody gives a damn, you know? It's like, what is it I do? Because I don't like being isolated, and it's self-imposed isolation because I don't want to get this. And even though I've had the vaccinations and I've had the booster shot, that those vaccinations, they don't last forever. Two things I think are going to happen. The coronavirus is going to continue to mutate if everyone does not adhere to social distance and the wearing of the mask. Nobody likes to wear the mask. Okay, let's get real here. But I don't want to give it to you and you don't want to give it to me. That's the right thing to do. So being isolated now with the pandemic exploding, another variation, this Omicron, I mean, it's frightening. And even though I've had the protection, that doesn't mean I still can't get sick or something bad can happen. So the idea here is I have to self-isolate if I want to continue to live. And so I choose to do that. It's necessary in the times that we're living in. But the mindfulness is something I'm fascinated with because as I get older and the time is flying by, how do you live in the present? Really, because it goes by so fast.
exactly. So and that's really the core of the work, because I think especially with the pandemic, people are a little bit more appreciating just the value of life itself, and just having, just that's what opens up all the opportunities. If you stop breathing, you can have all the money in the world, you can have the means to, travel, whatever you have. If you're not breathing, if you're not alive, and also if you're not aware.
When I think awareness goes hand in hand with mindfulness, because most people don't even, I look at mindfulness as being in the moment, or presently aware, or acutely aware of being in the moment, I guess is a better way of saying that. So I'm still learning, and part of what I know that you do is you offer a 10-week workshop
Mhm.
in mindfulness. And can you talk a little bit about, I'm assuming you do it through the same medium we're doing this interview, which is through conference calling
Yeah.
here, and how that has changed the dynamic from being in person and on location, because you are all over LA. When LA is LA, you can find Gail at just about every veteran event in Los Angeles County, because she has a team of nonprofits that she works with to provide alternative, holistic healing modalities, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So that's one of the sort of possibilities we open up. So the core of the work is just, how do I nurture my own inner skills of present moment awareness? How do I make it so that I can make a wise choice and be pleased with what I've done, rather than default to a knee-jerk reaction, face palm and go, what a jerk, look what I just did again. And to be in control in a very realistic, practical way, rather than be a victim of our own big emotions, a victim of our own crazy thoughts, a victim of someone being a jerk, a victim of the environment, a victim of the pandemic.
Well, I don't want to be a victim of the pandemic, at least not if it means terminal. You
Exactly.
I think in many ways, because it is a worldwide pandemic, and no matter what country you live in, or what religion you practice, or whether you're a man or woman, or whatever you choose to be, I think ultimately that does not really, in the scheme of things, matter. What really matters is living in the present and the here and now. And like you have said before, you know, how do you calm yourself? And how do you get to that point to where you have, I call it the devil and the angel. I have, as kids, we used to watch these cartoons, and you would have that visual of, you got the angel on one shoulder, you got the devil on the other one, and they're both talking to you at the same time. And which one are you going to answer? Well, now that is the issue. And how do you do that is easier said than done.
And that's why it takes practice, and it's an ongoing, and it's experiential, because you can have a great philosophy about something, but you can be a victim of listening to the wrong person on your shoulder, of someone really setting you off. And that's where just that constant present moment awareness allows you to make a wise choice, because you have clarity. Again, you're going to do something that you really regret, and then have to blame someone, either someone else or yourself, or often is both, um, if you're not making the choice. But if you're clear, if what's happening, what's going on, even as far as flying into a rage. One of my favorite stories from one of our workshop series was, it was a 10-session series at a transitional housing facility. And it was after just the fourth workshop, one of the guys came up to me and said, because of you, this time I'm not in jail. And I said, well, that's really lovely to hear. Can you explain the backstory on that? And he said, well, you've seen me get angry. And I only had seen him angry once, but it was really scary because he was out of control. The term enraged, it was like rage encapsulated him, and that's what was moving him. He lost control. The rage was just making him do crazy things, and it always got him in trouble. So he said, you've seen me angry before. And I always kind of clean up the language and, make the story a little generic so it's not identifying anyone. We're very protective of people's privacy and dignity. But this is my favorite story. And he said, well, I was in this situation and this guy got me really angry. And he said, but this time I noticed I was clenching my fist and I noticed I was lifting my arm. So this time, before fist met face, he was aware, and he could make a choice. So he could choose, is it worth it? Maybe it was worth it, ending up, in jail and taking another anger management class. Maybe the guy is like, yeah, I'll do it. It's worth it. But he could make a choice. He wasn't a victim of a big emotion.
And I think you really just hit upon the key right there. The mindfulness done correctly allows you to make, like you said before, in one way or another, clarity of thought allows you to make a better decision than being enraged by emotion. When somebody cuts you off at the freeway, or wherever, downtown LA traffic, wherever you happen to be driving, I'm sure I've done it myself. Expletives come out and you get a little crazy because you didn't expect it. But I guess part of mindfulness is expect it and then make the decision based on the past ways you have reacted, good and bad. And if you can just think that for a second before you make that emotional outburst, whether it's physical or swearing or whatever, however you express that's the key. Easier said than done, Gail.
And that's why it's something, that's why it's experiential. So we're going through in the workshops all these different ways of practicing mindfulness on a daily basis, in your daily life. You don't have to carve out extra time to do this. You don't have to find a quiet place away from everything else. You can find that clarity, that centeredness, that peacefulness, that awareness, that ability to choose because you're gathering intel. It's the difference, and this is important for veterans, it's the difference between vigilance and hypervigilance. So
Correct.
mindfulness is awareness, but it's supportive and it's nurturing instead of draining and exhausting. And you get to choose, am I going to be like this or like this? Because you're practicing. I'm noticing this. I'm noticing the mouse on my desk and the pen and my cell phone and the glue stick and my coffee mug and the flowers on my desk. I'm noticing in myself. What's going on inside of me? I'm a little bit cold, a little bit hungry, feeling pretty good. My shoulders are a little tight. So that constant present moment awareness, that clarity makes a huge difference. It's supportive. You can walk through things instead of feel like you're in a pinball machine. Bam, bam, ding, 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 ding. And I like that feeling. And I don't want it to just be when I have the time and money for a vacation. I want to live my life that way. And we usually in at least one of the workshops, we go into this, the neurobiology of mindfulness, of present moment awareness. What's happening. Actually, there are MRIs that show this. I was amazed when I saw this the first time, that show a brain responding to a stimulus before learning mindfulness, and a brain responding to that same stimulus after it was an 8 or 10-week course of mindfulness. And instead of a trauma response kicking in, instead of the primitive part of the brain being the one that drives the action, it was the prefrontal cortex, the more advanced, intelligent part of the brain that responded. Mindfulness actually reprograms your brain, your nervous system, so that it's the more advanced part of us that's making a decision on how to act, which is more likely to have a good result. So again, instead of being a victim of our trauma and repeating a traumatic response again and again and again, instead of digging that groove deeper each time, we're building strength in another part of our brain. We're, dare I say, healing trauma in such a simple way, because if we're responding, if we're using a traumatic response to deal with something, fight, flight, or freeze, we're nurturing the trauma. We're building our traumatic response. If we're using a different response, what's happening, we're using a different part of our brain, we're shifting the energy that we're using and that we're living from. And that traumatic response just kind of shrinks because it's not getting attention. Talk about listening to the angel or the devil on our shoulder, or the story, I believe it's a Native American story. The young guy asked, why do people do horrible things? And grandfather says, well, in us, we have two wolves, a good wolf or a bad wolf, and they're always fighting for dominance. And he says, grandfather, which one wins? He said, the wolf that you feed. So with mindfulness, we're feeding conscious, intelligent awareness. We're developing our own innate skills instead of being a victim of something that it was a natural response to what happened to us. We're not supposed to blame ourselves for having trauma or for having a traumatic response, but we can choose to nurture a different part without blaming, without denying something happened, without denying, look, this is what I do, but now I have a choice and this is what I can do. And what a huge difference. And how important at a time of uncertainty. I mean, we all thought, okay, we'll make it through 2020 and, things will be back to normal. And now we're at the end of 2021 and things aren't back to normal. And how do we reopen our offices? Do we not? Do we eat out with friends or do we not? When there's so much uncertainty, how do you walk with some certainty and dignity through your life? You stay aware of what's happening on all levels without overloading. Just take it in, take it in, take it in, take it in, and being able to practice doing that once or twice a week for free with us online safely. It's like, hey, why not?
And it's a wonderful way to let it go. Let that trauma dissipate.
Exactly.
Let it leave your mind, your physical being. Let it go. As the song says, just let it go. Because really, in actuality, and especially in the times that we're living in with the global pandemic, we don't have time for the petty stuff. Be more aware, be living in the moment, understand how you react, why you react the way that you do, and find a way to change it, because the only one you really destroy is yourself. You're not really destroying someone else with all the anger. It's that self-destruction. And that's what I like the most about mindfulness. I mean, I need to practice it myself more, certainly because of the pandemic, but just generally because it really does help you be more kind, be more aware of thinking how you act affects someone else and vice versa. And having my own problems with military issues as I grew up, mindfulness is a gift that everybody should practice. It's not transcendental meditation, it really is living in the present. And like you keep saying, being aware of your surroundings. You don't have to be with anybody, but use the awareness of your surroundings to distract yourself from the anger or the emotional outburst or the emotional trauma that you're experiencing.
And I think it's less distracting from those things as just being aware of them and knowing the difference. This is me, and this is something that I'm experiencing right now. And what relationship do I choose to have with it? And it can be, I see you, anger, I see you coming up, and you're not the wolf I want to feed.
I like that.
And choosing, I'm going to, as simply as, instead of distracting from that, I'm going to honor with my attention something that deserves it more, which is my hands, feeling my feet on the ground, feeling as a breeze blowing. Do I have, a fan going? Choosing where to put my attention, because I'm getting good at that.
And Gail, if someone would like to get in touch with you, can you give us your phone number?
So the phone number is area code 818 616 2931. Also, you can email info, short for information. So info@mindfulveteranproject.org. You can visit our website at mindfulveteranproject.org. So we also serve active duty, Guard, and Reserve members, and spouses, all the family members. All of our work is free. And something very important, is confidential. Take care.
Great to see you and Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Best is yet to come.
Yes. Yes.